ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world, spring is here. The vaccine is coming. Trump is gone. Things are looking up. And Wes Moore is returning to the program. I am very happy to bring back a returning champion, one of our original champions from one of the first 10 episodes. The great and powerful Wes Moore returns.
Hey, it's great to be with you, brother. And I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of everything you're building. And you're right, it was crazy. I woke up this morning, and I swear, I think it was the first morning that I woke up for a run, and the sun was already starting to come up. And now it's at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was like, oh my gosh.
Good.
Like, things are different.
It's happening. We had our mutual friend Darren Walker on a couple weeks ago, and he said hope is the oxygen of democracy.
Yes.
And that hope is flowing and pumping, and I want to share it and spread it. And you're like a walking super spreader of hope, and you have been your whole life and career, and that's why I'm so excited to have you back on right now. See, I got dressed up for you. For folks watching on video, I actually wore a jacket for like maybe the first time in a year, and you got you got a t-shirt on, man. It looks like a very nice t-shirt. It's not a $20 t-shirt, but you have a t-shirt on.
I do, but you know what though? Actually, this is dressing up, and I'll explain.
Okay.
And actually, you talk about hope. This shirt epitomizes hope for me. So this shirt is actually part of the Under Armour Devin Allen collection. For those who don't know, Devin Allen is an activist, a photographer. He's an African American photographer who now has 2 covers on Time magazine. One was during, both was during times of protest, but the first one was actually this really iconic shot of a person running with this whole phalanx of police officers, behind him.
I know the shot, yeah.
Rising in Baltimore, classic shot. And the thing I love about this is that he's just a kid from Baltimore who is, I think Devin probably now is 30 years old, but he's become this world-renowned photographer from Baltimore, and now he has he's got a shoe line with Under Armour. He's got an entire clothing collection. And the beautiful thing about that for me is, usually that thing is reserved for, the basketball star or the football star. An activist got his own line. A photographer got his own line. And there's just something so beautiful about it. So every time when people say, all right, you have to dress up, for me, that means put on the Devin Allen collection. So that's what I'm repping today.
Well, thank you for getting dressed up. It looks very nice. It also is like, that is a very nice shirt. The Rock has a line at Under Armour now, right? Like that's one of your many involvements. A lot to get into. The last time you joined us was June 2019. We had just kicked off the show. It was Father's Day. We were in New York together at the Classic Car Club. You were, a couple years into Robin Hood. You were going back and forth between Baltimore and New York. A lot of Baltimore things we dug into, and there's a lot of Baltimore things I'd love to dig into now. But it's a year after the pandemic. You have been one of the helpers. You're on the front lines every day, making this country better, adding light to the heat. Tell folks, please, Wes, where are you and how are you? And how are the people around you 1 year into this pandemic?
So I'm here in Baltimore, and where we've been. We actually just passed the year commemoration for closing our offices. We closed our offices on May 2nd last year, so we closed pretty early, and we started noticing pretty early how damaging this was going to be. We had a couple members of our team get sick, pretty early, and we started just seeing especially because New York really was the epicenter of all this, and I remember calling up Dawn, my wife, who adores you, Paul, and was just like, I'm gonna have to close the office. And I said, I think I'm gonna have to close the office for like 3 months. And I said it to her like that was a long period of time. I was like, 3 months, God, that's so crazy. And she was like, I think it's gonna be longer than that. And we now just passed a year and our offices are still closed. And it's hard to even quantify how damaging this year has been for our communities. And I say that because not that it's difficult. I mean, like we watched 11 years of job growth go away in 11 weeks, right? We watched the shuttering of industries, especially when you're talking about like the hospitality industry, hotels and restaurants, which were actually the industries that were doing that were employing the population that we serve more than any other employment sector, right? Those who are low wage workers, people who are undocumented, people of color, etc. Right? So you saw how the quantifiable impacts of this hit really hard and show themselves in a variety of different ways. But it's also really difficult for me not to separate just how personally damaging this has been to watch friends,
Mm,
watch our partners in the work,
mm,
watch the mental health challenges, watch how difficult it's been to have kids who are now in school. But, like, for example, in Baltimore City, 61% of high school freshmen right now are chronically absent.
mm.
Literally, we don't know where they are. 61% of Baltimore City high school freshmen are missing more than 30% of the school year. So while the data is incredibly troubling about how difficult this year has been, it's the personal stories that, for all of us that we know too well, that have just made this year a really, really hard and complicated
I'm so glad you are framing it that way, because I think it's very important, especially for leaders like us that are in the public sphere, to be honest about how hard it's been and to be honest about how damaging it's been, recognizing that we've been lucky comparatively. But I got this feeling right now where everybody thinks the end of the war is coming, right? And maybe there'll be a formal ceasefire and we'll declare an end to the pandemic. And then there'll be these like little flare ups. It might be a variant, it might be an insurgency, right? If we use this war context.
one.
But people who've been to war know that the war doesn't end when the fighting stops.
That's right.
And then we're going to get into the trauma and the loss and the pain and the long tail of everything from mental health, to financial ruin, and recognizing that not everybody experienced this war differently. Some people got out, some people had to stay deep in the crosshairs. So you're shaping all of that through your example and through your work. You're also, more and more a thought leader. You're interpreting everything going on in the world. You're keeping yourself sane. You got a beautiful family. I look to you as a mentor as a father. You've taught me a lot, and Dawn's taught me a lot about parenting. But I'm not going to ask you the drinking question anymore, but I am going to ask you some recent news questions. There is a lot of good stuff happening, including Coming to America 2 happened. I don't know if I've been more excited about a movie in 5 years than, like, maybe longer than Coming to America 2, right? Like, I accidentally played it for my son once, and my wife was like, "Do you realize what you just played for our 5-year-old?" But did you see it? Wes Moore, what did you think of Coming to America 2?
I did see it. We actually watched it as a family, and I thought it was fantastic. And I know I know there's people out there who throw shade on, oh, it wasn't as good as the original, it wasn't good as the original. First of all, saying it wasn't as good as the original is kind of like saying, oh, it wasn't good as perfection. The original was perfection. I get it. But the second one was really good. I mean, like, Eddie Murphy came with it. I thought the fact that he brought in all the characters in the cast from the last time was fantastic. I thought that Wesley Snipes was freaking hilarious and was a great addition. And I had to tell you, I love the fact that I could actually watch it. Our daughter's now 9, our son is now 7, and maybe there might be a few parts, but I love the fact that we could watch it as a family and really enjoy it and just laugh at all these same parts. So I thought it was great, man, and well worth the wait. He did a great job with it.
I'm 100% with you. It's great. I ended it and I looked at Lauren and said, that was great. Yeah. That was just great, right? And they even cleaned some things up. Like, the bath scene is a little bit cleaned up, right? Like they knew they were going to have a bigger audience on this one. But, all the cameos are amazing. Like when En Vogue comes out, right? And Dikembe Mutombo with the no.
Chocolate.
Like,
sexual chocolate came back.
All of them, right? And the music, the John Legend song at the end, like they just it was so cool because they had so much time and it was such an iconic and important, groundbreaking film, right? Like, was Louis Anderson like the only white guy in the first one? One of the only white guys in the first one? They bring him back, but now it has so much more gravity, I think, right? And the time it's coming into, everything is changing so fast, and in many, I don't want to dismiss it as just entertainment. Like that was an important cultural touch point, and it was just really fun, right? Like,
And and there were some really, and I don't want to ruin it for people who have not seen it yet. I
yeah,
really would urge you to go see it. But even when you think about the themes that they were drawing around it, and the things that were in some cases subtle, and in some cases not so subtle, about how we think about power in our society, who has power and who doesn't, and how we think about transfers of power and what it means to make our society better, oftentimes means looking in different places for people who should assume that
mm,
power. So again, I'm not trying to ruin it for
no,
people who haven't seen it, but you'll see what I mean when you see the movie. But I thought he did a beautiful job of kind of like sticking the landing when it comes to actually forcing our society to ask questions about power and autonomy and authority. It was really well done.
I mean, gender equality, race,
Exactly.
socioeconomic status, international relations,
Exactly.
combat, like all of it is packed into Coming to America in a really artful and I think important way. And it's happening in a context where, Black Panther was so game changing, right? Like the idea that when I was in, my son's in kindergarten, Ryder's in kindergarten, like the idea that white kids want to be Black Panther,
Yes.
right? Like there was no, were there any Black superheroes that we could be when we were kids that we knew? I mean, not that you could really think of unless you were like a really big Marvel geek, right? But now kids are fighting over who's going to be Black Panther, right? And the impact of that is so tremendous.
Yeah.
And I thought about how the women of the family are empowered, right? And they're these like kick-ass karate masters, right? But so all of that is happening on another really complicated, charged global experience, which is the Meghan and Harry interview. You've been a leader on race. And part of me was like, you know what? I'm not going to watch this. I'm going to watch The Expanse again, by the way, which has a Baltimore connection. If you're not into The Expanse, you will find out. There's a Baltimore connection. They go deep into Baltimore in season 5, 200 years into the future. So if you haven't seen that,
Oh, wow.
oh yes, Wes. I'm glad I gave you that one. Expanse fans know what I'm talking about.
I'm
But
on.
I watched The Expanse and I was like, you know what? I have to watch this because it seems to be really unleashing and unpacking a conversation around race in America and in the world. So, I don't know if you've met Prince Harry. He's done a lot of work in the U.S. in philanthropy and especially in the veterans community. A lot of folks don't realize he's a tested combat vet. But what are your takeaways? You're a thought leader in America, especially on issues of race and class and all the other stuff that's impacted there. What are your takeaways from that interview?
I well, I have had a chance to meet Prince Harry, and then and first of all, I thought that Oprah just did an absolutely magnificent job with that interview, as she always does, because she has a remarkable ability just to pull truth out in a way that is just so digestible to everybody.
Mm.
But I thought the interview was really powerful, not just because of the bombshell revelations that everybody's talking about, but I thought that it was what was behind those revelations that were really hard hitting and lasting. And frankly, I think there is this idea of a racial tension that had to be understood, and not even just within Buckingham Palace or within the royal family, right? It is this idea of a tension that seeps and sits within our society at large that we still haven't fully wrestled with. And and I was thinking about it, Paul, where about 4 months ago there was a new there was Johns Hopkins actually did a research within its own university history, and there was always this lasting understanding that Johns Hopkins, the founder of Johns Hopkins, who the university is named after, was this great abolitionist. Right, that was the narrative that we all got about Johns Hopkins, who he was, what he contributed, and
You
John.
were a student there. You
I
played
was a
football
student.
there. You're on the board there. You
That's right.
grew up nearby, right?
That's right.
Your story, Hopkins, is legendary now. You're
It
one
is
of
legendary.
their most
le-
celebrated graduates.
That's right, and legendary and complicated when it
Right.
comes to its relationship with the history with Baltimore City. But we always had this as an understanding that this was this history. And a few months ago, after Hopkins did its own research, it realized that that story that they were telling about Johns Hopkins was not complete, and that Johns Hopkins was actually a slave owner as well. And what was fascinating was it forced me to actually take a moment and think to myself, all right, I whether it was the school I attended as my undergraduate institution, Johns Hopkins, whether it was the military bases that I was trained at, places like Fort Benning and Fort Bragg. I mean, Fort Bragg is named after Braxton Bragg, I mean, a Confederate general, and not a very good general at that, right? A traitor, a loser, but we're named Fort Bragg after him. I went to Oxford University on a Rhodes Scholarship, named after Cecil Rhodes, who was one of the most virulent racists. And literally, where in his quest and to the point that he became the wealthiest man in the world at the time, was doing it knowing that there were just thousands of bodies, black bodies, that were lost in the quest for in the search in these diamond mines. And I thought to myself, was like, well, every single place that helped to train me were either founded or named after people who despised me. And that, the reality of that tension, the reality of someone being asked about what it means, that asking a question about how their child will be interpreted, how that will be interpreted, how that will have ramifications and implications on things. There's a larger and a deeper tension that I think that interview highlighted, that we as a large society have got to have the maturity and the courage to wrestle with. Understanding that our history does matter, and an examination of that history, an examination of how we got here, an examination of why those things still exist, about why in 2020 or 2019 those conversations were being had with Prince Harry about what his child would look like in Buckingham Palace. Right. We have to be able to delve into that, not to play I told you so or gotcha or anything along those lines. But if we are planning on moving forward as a collective society, if we're planning on doing this in a way that is honoring of all of our humanity, then we can't be afraid of the hard. We can't be afraid of the suck. We can't be afraid of the complicated. And that's one of the things I really liked about that interview, was once again, it gave our world a chance to have a conversation with the complicated, and instead of shying away and turning our eyes away, knowing that if we can do this, that we will be better because of it.
And it's, it takes leadership to blow things up that need blowing up, right? And I can't imagine how many conversations you've been in places like Oxford or Hopkins, but now we've got, Harry and Meghan that are blowing up what in many, people forget from afar was at times a very oppressive, racist regime, right? I mean, and it's not just black people. I mean, the Irish aren't crazy about the monarchy either, right? I mean, there's plenty of elements of this that are really important to unpack. But a lot of systems are being blown up right now, and a lot of resets are happening. And as we have this conversation this week, the House and Senate will pass Biden's so far signature piece of legislation, the coronavirus, emergency supplemental. That is, one of the biggest bills, if not the biggest bill in recent American history. There's a really important point of this that you've been advocating very strongly on that I think is underreported, which is the child tax credit, right? Can you explain to folks who maybe don't appreciate this, what is the tax credit, the child tax credit, and why is it so important for everything? Not just for poor kids, not just for poor people, not just for kids. Why is this such an important inflection point for everything?
I'd say, and for those who are just listening, I'd say I'm smiling from ear to ear as you ask this question, Paul. I mean, we have been pushing for a long time on this adjustment to the child tax credit. And the fact that this is now getting ready to go and become law. If you would have said to me a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, saying, we can make adjustments on the child tax credit, and I'll explain in a second what exactly that means, I would have said, listen, in my greatest hopes, it's a long shot, right? What the child tax credit is, the child tax credit is essentially it's a tax credit that goes to any parent within our society, and it was intended to be a poverty fighting tax credit, right? Something for families so that they can have a little bit of extra money if they have children, and to be able for them to use it for, use it for whatever it is they choose to use for tutoring for their kids, for to take their kids out for pizza or maybe a movie, for maybe to taking them to giving them coaching lessons or whatever it is. But it's just a little bit of extra money, just
or diapers or daycare or food, right?
anything, right? But just taking a little bit of extra pressure, particularly off of those who are living in poverty and those who are in really complicated circumstances. And when we say people living in poverty, oftentimes we have to be clear that 24% of people who lost their jobs due to COVID-19 were people who were living in poverty before COVID-19, i.e., the working poor. Right? People who were working jobs, and in some cases multiple jobs, and still living below the poverty line. Right? So we created this child tax credit as a way of being able to provide a little bit of breathing room to families who are some of the most under-resourced families in our country. But it had flaws. One of the big flaws that it had was that there was an earn-in that a person had to have in order for them to qualify for the child tax credit. So, for example, anywhere between 24 and 27 million children every single year did not qualify for the child tax credit because their family was too deep in poverty. And that goes back to what we're saying too, when you're talking about the people who are oftentimes are the working poor, the ones who are changing bed sheets and serving coffee, picking up trash, right? People who we see and interact with every single day, and we have no idea the type of pressure that they are facing every day to support their families. And so what the adjustment to the child tax credit does, what this bill does, is essentially makes that the child tax credit fully refundable. So so we've eliminated the idea of an earn-in. And what we're then pushing for is now to make it permanent. What that is going to do is this: for those 24 to 27 million children, you now qualify. In the stroke of a pen, Paul, we are going to cut child poverty by half.
Yep.
In the stroke of a pen. So if you have a child under the age of 6, you now have a $3,600 child tax credit every single year that gets paid monthly. But every single year you get a $3,600 tax credit. If your child is over the age of 6, that is a $3,000 credit. But that is money for you to be able to support your child and support your family in ways that you know that your family and your child needs in that moment. And so this is the most powerful and expansive, not just poverty fighting mechanism that we have passed now in 4 decades, but it's the most brilliant and the most innovative and the most assertive way of policy that we have ever put in place that is actually fundamentally supporting our children. And I think about it in context for, even our work in Robin Hood. I run one of the largest poverty fighting organizations in this country. And when you look at over the past 32 years of Robin Hood's existence, that we have allocated north of $3 billion into the poverty fight. What this bill will do, what this adjustment to the child tax credit will do, is it will take 32 years of what we have put into the poverty fight all combined, and that will be eclipsed in the stroke of a pen. Mm. That's how important this bill is.
How much, Wes, do you know how much is it? If you had to total it all together, it's got to be, it's tens of billions, I don't know, hundreds of billions, right? And so I think you and I have talked over the years and worked together on issues and underscored the importance of advocacy. Because all the hedge fund guys in New York can fund all the soup kitchens in the world, but if you don't change policy, you're not moving the needle, right? We did this together with the GI Bill and with other, right? Government has a scale that is unprecedented, right? And so now, this massive inflection point that'll probably change poverty more than since Johnson was president, right? Half the kids will hopefully be out of poverty, and it's coming at a crisis time, right? Crisis presents opportunity, and maybe that presents an opportunity for people to come together on this and get it through. I was listening to Charlie Kirk, the right-wing talk show host, and he was supporting this because he said, you know what, it's going to support families, and I want people to have more kids, and we have a population growth problem. So even conservatives are supporting this, and it's going to happen. right? And it's going to provide reinforcements down to the community. And I think it's coming at a critical time because you and I are also on the front lines of many of the issues that are the longer tails of the pandemic, to include mental health, right? You have been out in front. I have been out in front. We talked about our service and the organizations we work with, but we're starting to see the lights blink. I mean, they're long since blinking, right? But COVID, the economy, the stress, the isolation, the mental health toll is tremendous. And you and I continue to lose friends very close to us. And I appreciate you joining me now because I know you're going through a hard time. You just lost someone close to you. Can you talk about what you see coming, what you think people need to know, and as much as you're comfortable sharing about, what's been going on?
And first, I got to tell you, Paul. I mean, you have led on this issue, not just for as long as I've known you, which is in 15, 20 years, but even before that. You have been pushing on the importance of policy and advocacy. You've been pushing on the importance of understanding mental health, because you like so many of us, we continue to see these daily reminders of that. Just because a person says they're okay does not mean they're okay. And just recently we lost another brother of ours, a veteran, First Sergeant Boyd McDaniels. And the challenges that families are facing. And I remember I was speaking to his brother, who was a dear friend, when I first heard the news, and I was dreading the reasons why. And he just sent me a note back, and he just sent me a text back, and just said, and it just simply said, mental health is real. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. I knew exactly what happened. We cannot overstate the psychological, the mental health damage that, not just that this period has caused, but it's that this period has compounded. It's that we've had these challenges and these issues for a very, very, very long period of time. We know it, we see it, and then when we add on this additional stress, the additional burden of employment instability, wage instability, of families going through other additional traumas, of not being able to get together as friends and family and just a hug. Oh, I haven't, my mom and my grandmother, they're here in Maryland. They live 20 minutes away from me. I haven't given them a legit hug in a year. We cannot underestimate the type of damage this is doing, and to your point, how long this tail is. Now, I think what also does become really important in all of this is it is both about, are we making sure that we're checking up on people? It is about how we're making sure that we're, making sure folks are okay. Or are we making sure that we're being extra diligent about connecting? But it is also about, how are we going to make sure that our policies match the problems? How are we making sure that the funding that is needed to be able to do everything from mental health screening to mental health supports actually match the enormity and the scope of the challenge that we're now facing? And this really becomes our larger societal test, is where we can talk about the basics of infrastructure and all these other elements, but the mental health damage that we continue to see, and I'm so tired of getting phone calls and text messages from friends. I'm so tired of it. But it means we're going to have to be incredibly diligent and stubborn about actually getting at both root causes and the actual hurt of now, because there is a hurt of now that is taking place within our communities.
Thank you for sharing that, especially, sharing the story of First Sergeant Daniels. You and I are in this world where, we're constantly emailing and texting, and it's like every day we got another one. It's like the hashtag, our friends are dying, and they're dying all around us, have been 17 veterans a day. The estimates are it's many other people. The policy idea that I hope starts to take hold is, I feel like this last Biden bill, this new Biden bill, is the bill we need to end the war, right? And it reminds me of like the last war supplemental in the Middle East, and they forgot to fund the VA afterward, right? So what we're going to need, in my view, is a massive policy push that's going to look like a reconstruction bill, right? That deals with the mental health toll as an example, right? Maybe just the mental health toll, but recognizing our people are wounded after combat, our people are hurting. It doesn't go away because we open all the restaurants and the schools, and that damage is forever. And we're going to need to invest in that, maybe even at a higher level than we did in this bill. So I'm throwing that idea out in the universe. I know you'll support it. We have a
And,
short.
and can I say one more thing too?
Yeah.
And be intentional about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And be intentional about the fact that, let's not dance around the language,
Right.
right? We are going to put X funding for mental health.
Right. Right.
Don't dance around this. Call it what it is.
It's that or people die. That's it. Like you can't keep talking about, and I've been critical of all the VA secretaries. I think that Secretary McDonough has been doing some good things out of the gate. I don't think he was the right choice, but I'm going to support him now. His answer on suicide in his first press conference sounded like everybody else's answer. Like, we are not pulling the alarm. Like, this is not all hands on deck. We are not recognizing how many people are dying. So I'm going to keep banging on that drum. I know you will as well. Related, and we don't have a lot of time left. Related, there are a lot of folks that are lost, that are prone to extremism. You have been on the front lines of combating extremism, white nationalism, institutionalized racism. You connected me with the family of Lieutenant Richard Collins, who was tragically murdered in 2017 in Maryland. It was past a warning sign, right? Folks say, well, where were the warning signs? Did you not see that Lieutenant Collins was murdered on the streets? And we talked about it, and he couldn't be buried properly by his family. Now his murderer has been sentenced to prison, life in prison, not a hate crime, I believe, right? But that was a warning. So let me ask you to unpack all of it. You're going to be on the front lines fighting this domestic threat, trying to get people not to convert to extremism. How do you want to break down where we are right now in relation to that immediate national security, domestic, existential threat?
Yeah, and I'll take a moment both to give you a shout out for all your leadership and what happened with Lieutenant Collins, but I think I just want to give a context to the audience about who this young man was. He was a third generation soldier. His grandfather was also in the Army, and in fact, his grandfather, after serving overseas, was killed by a white supremacist when he came home and was when he came home from deployment. His father then served in the military, and his father, who he and his wife Dawn have become close friends, talks about his pride when Richie said that he wanted to join the Army and join ROTC. He goes through ROTC. He, for those who weren't in the service, there's almost like a day or two delay between when you get commissioned and when you actually graduate. It's like, it's a quirky thing that for all of us who've done it, we don't think about, but it matters in this case because he was commissioned. Later on that night, he went out to go celebrate with friends. He was a student at Bowie State University, HBCU in Maryland. And he was at the University of Maryland College Park, and someone came up to him and stabbed him in the chest, and he died. And because he was commissioned but wasn't yet a graduate, because he didn't officially graduate from Bowie State because he had that distance, there were complications as to how exactly he would be recognized in the military, covering the funeral. There were questions, even as this case went to trial, about, well, even though this person had a whole series and slew of things on their website and white supremacy writings and so on and so forth, but was this really a hate crime? Because what he said to Richie was step left, and Richie said, I'm sorry. And then when he said, I'm not stepping left, the guy told him move to the left. And he said, I'm not moving left. He stabbed him in the chest. So there were now bills that have been passed, and where even though he was not convicted of a hate crime, we now have bills that were passed. For example, called the Richard Collins Act, which allows prosecutors to pursue hate crime charges for acts motivated in part by hate. Right. This is these are things, and one of the reasons that I'm so blessed by the Collins family is this is a family who epitomizes this idea of turning pain into purpose, right? They have never stopped fighting to protect not just the legacy of Richie, but to protect the fact that this should never have to happen again to any family, like what happened to their son. And I think and I think one thing we're seeing right now is, we are hitting this point in our nation where there is so much distrust, frustration, hatred, history that is now turning into almost this very toxic cocktail that is showing itself in really ugly ways, like what we saw with Lieutenant Collins, like what we saw on January 6th. And I think this is actually an important moment for our nation to be able to take a real beat, to be able to take a pause and breathe,
Mm.
and to really think about what kind of country are we trying to be? Are we trying to be a country where we will repeatedly be at each other's throats? Or are we going to be a country that is going to look at our history and to be able to understand that understanding that process is important for us to be able to get to the process of healing, understanding that this nation's history has been uneven, that this nation's history has been violent, that this nation's history has been unequal. But we also understand this, that we have had this moral arc that Dr. King talked about, the moral arc of that bends towards justice. But at every single step, it bends towards justice not because of inevitability. It bends towards justice because there are people who are pulling it that way, and that's the thing that we have to consistently focus on and think about how do we take that history, how do we take that and take this moment to be able to build not just anew, but build something in many ways that's just completely reimagined.
So thank you for sharing that, for leading on it. Huge thanks and gratitude to the Collins family, to you, to Allison Jaslow, so many other people that pushed this forward. Right, people came out in many ways, but the fight does not end. That arc is bent because of Richie Collins, because of the Collins family, because of leadership, because of you. This is a moment for leadership. Anyone who's listened to you has been inspired by you. I asked you and Willie Geist to run for anything, 2 years ago on this show. Okay. I hope that maybe Willie will run for mayor because that might be still open if Andrew Yang doesn't win. I think a lot of folks would like to see you run for governor of New York. There's a lot of controversy happening there around Governor Cuomo. And you have publicly said you are exploring running for governor in Maryland. I have never seen a more universally positive, excited reaction from people than when you said you might run. I know you heard that. People telling me, where can I sign up? How can I move to Maryland? How far is Baltimore from where I live? People want you to run, and you're exploring it. Number one, do you want to make any news here today? And number two, this is independent Americans. Are you at all considering running as an independent?
So I am. I'm a very, very proud Marylander. Born down here, raised down here, live down here now, and I am seriously exploring, looking at the governor's race in Maryland, and it's one of these things, Paul, where I think for all of us, we consistently pressure test ourselves of how we can best be of service in certain moments. Where I think about so many of the issues that have been my life's issues. They're on the ballot. Every single one of the issues that we have been working on and fighting on, that many of we've been working on together, they are on the ballot. And so when I think about what is going to be the direction of my state, what is going to be the direction of the Democratic Party, what is going to be the direction of all of these elements of how we think about this, and knowing that we actually can be bold, and that's okay, that we can actually get some important work done, and it's urgent that we actually try to get it done. And so I really am very seriously, considering this. I'm very seriously exploring this, and I'm very seriously, just pushing on this idea of asking myself, Is this the way that I can best be useful and best be of service in this moment? And it's been a powerful process, and particularly when I think about where we are as an organization with Robinhood. I'm so proud of what this organization has accomplished in my 4.5 years here. The organization has never been in a stronger place, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the team that we built. I'm proud of what we gotten done, and I really am just thinking through now. It's like, so how do we think about the next battles that I want to take on?
Well, we need selfless leaders leading those battles. And I think that your examination and consideration of this process is not just a test for you, it's a test for us. Like, this is an example. I said, I think when I had you on the first time, more in 24. So maybe it's going to be more in 22, but we need to encourage you to run. We need to create a space where you can run. We need, whether it's campaign finance reform or people from different parties coming together or volunteers willing to step up. There is this wave of leaders like you and many people we know who haven't run over the last 10, 15 years, who we need to run, who we need to draft. And, you're a guy, I don't care what party you run from, you're going to have my support, and you're going to have people from a lot of backgrounds supporting you. And I think those are the kind of transformative leaders we need. So this is my challenge to everyone, is like, we need to get Wes Moore to continue to rise. You always sign your emails at Elevate, and you're such an inspiring leader because you pull people up with you, whether it's the folks at Robinhood, your team, the Collins, everyone. This is the kind of leader we need for this moment. Because shit's hard, and it's going to be hard for a while. And we need leaders with courage and who can bring people together and who can bring in artists and Oprah and Under Armour and philanthropy and all this shit together. So, I am always, one of your biggest fans, but I think it's also not about you. It's about what you represent. And we need this generation of leaders like you now more than ever, because the fight ain't over. The fight's in many ways just getting started, and the rebuilding, winning the fight may actually be easier than rebuilding after the fight.
And so that you're 100% right. And listen, we win with coalitions.
Yeah.
Period. We win with coalitions. We will lose with divisions. We have to be able to build a strong coalition that cares deeply about protecting our future in a way that's going to protect everybody.
America's a team game, and you're a hell of a quarterback. I'll be your left tackle. And I think there's a lot of people who want to be your left tackle over the next couple of years and who are down for whatever. I promised the great Brian Jones that I'd let you out of here in time for a hard stop. I want to present you gifts. Okay. You're going to get, we're still doing peeps. So Easter's.
I love it.
We have new Independent Americans gear coming. It should be up on the website this week or next. You're going to get some of that.
Beautiful.
Not made by Under Armour, but made by Oscar Mike. Under Armour, you should, acquire Oscar Mike for $1 billion. And some Uncle Nearest whiskey from our friend Jeffrey Wright. And
Uncle Nearest, I love that stuff.
They're great. They're great supporters of the show. I'm going to send you some of that. And I will ask you to end the final question that continues to divide Americans. We unite people. We bring light, but not heat. But there's one question that has torn America apart. And Wes Moore, this is a tough one. If you're going to be a politician, you're going to have to answer tough questions. You can't pick a neutral ground or punt on this one. Wes Moore, pancakes or waffles?
You kidding me? Pancakes. Pancakes.
Why?
Pancakes. So here's why. I think waffles are almost too cute, right? Like waffles, it's perfectly symmetrical. It's the little pockets for the syrup. They're almost too cute. Pancakes are messy. They are complex because, waffles are very much like, this is the size of your waffle. Pancakes, if I have 3 waffles, I will have 3 completely different size pancakes. They will be all over the place. And I love that. I love it because we're messy. We are messy as a people, and that's okay because we're freaking delicious. So pancakes all day long.
Best answer ever. I hope if you're governor, you maybe have Pancake Sunday with Wes. That would be a great family day. We could make a syrup out of Uncle Nearest. We could all hang out and watch The Expanse.
Pancakes. Interesting.
What's that?
Oh, I like that. I said Uncle Nearest pancakes. I like that idea.
Yeah, they should give us a cut of that. But I am infinitely grateful for your leadership, for your friendship, for your support, for Righteous Media, for me, my family, just for all that you do. I love you. I'm grateful that our country has a leader like you. Baltimore is lucky to have you. If it was a draft, I wish New York could draft you and get you to run for governor of New York, but Maryland's going to be lucky to have you. America's lucky to have you. Your family is a great inspiration as well. And next time we can go deeper on parenting and all the lessons you show me there. But you're what this country's all about, my friend. And I'm grateful for your leadership. I'm excited for what's next. I promised people we'd bring hope. So the hope is also a to be continued. Wes Moore will be back. Follow him. He is inspiring. He's incredible. And he is definitely staying vigilant. Thank you, my friend, for all that you do and for joining us.
You're the best, brother. Bless you, man. Thank you.
You got it. Pancakes for everybody.